Good evening, viewers. Welcome to the NewsHour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas GK. As the I.N.D.I.A Bloc assembled in Mumbai for the third round of their meeting to chalk out a strategy for the 2024 polls, Modi government has called a special session of the Parliament. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi tweeted that the special session will be held between the 18th of September and the 22nd and will have 5 sittings. The tweet further read, and I quote, "Amidst Amrit Kal, looking forward to having fruitful discussion and debate in Parliament." The announcement of a special session led to speculation on whether any big bang legislation is being planned to be brought into the Parliament. Even though the government and ministers were extremely tight-lipped, there are murmurs in political corridors that the centre could bring the One Nation, One Election bill. This essentially means that the entire country will have elections together at one time. The opposition is already fuming and has hit out at the Modi government. Listen in.
स्पेशल सेशन बुला रही है सरकार, वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन बिल ला सकती है।
Assuming this is correct, assuming they want to bring in one nation, one election, it's very difficult to understand what that means. Our system is not like the American system. One government falls or one particular state assembly gets dissolved. You can't, because of that, have an election in the entire country.
देखिए, ये चर्चा चलाई जा रही है कि वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन का कोई बिल पास करने के लिए सेशन बुलाया जा रहा है। निश्चित रूप से ये एक मोदी जी की घबराहट साफ तौर पे दिखाई पड़ रही है। 3 राज्यों के चुनाव बीजेपी हारने जा रही है।
तो बगैर हम राय मशवरा कर बगैर सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स से पूछकर, बगैर इलेक्शन कमीशन की रिपोर्ट लेकर, बगैर उनसे ये पूछकर कि ये पॉसिबल है या नहीं पॉसिबल है, बगैर वो सिक्योरिटी सर्विसेज से पूछकर के इतना हम कर पाएंगे कि नहीं कर पाएंगे एट द सेम टाइम, बगैर उन स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से पूछकर कि क्या वो सहमत है या नहीं सहमत है, बगैर चीफ मिनिस्टर्स को साथ में लेकर अगर वो ये निर्णय लेते हैं, हम उसका विरोध करेंगे।
बीजेपी इज अ वेरी सेंसिटिव मैटर. बीजेपी शुड मेक अ इन-डेप्थ स्टडी टॉकिंग टू ऑल द स्टेक होल्डर्स involved with this, and they should come out with a thing. Otherwise, it would appear to be a political gimmick just for their political gains.
हमारे दो की राजनीति करने वाली भारतीय जनता पार्टी अडानी मामले में पुनः कहीं ना कहीं कटघरे में खड़े हो रही है, तो उससे ध्यान भटकाने के लिए चुनाव की चर्चा शुरू कर दी है।
And now we bring you various scenarios and possibilities. First of all, let's take a look at the hurdle of legal amendments that the government may have to cross if it is aiming for one nation, one poll. The government, of course, needs to look at, first and foremost, Article 83. Now, this is related to the duration of the Houses of Parliament. Moving on to the next article that the government will have to amend in the Constitution, it's 85, and that talks about the dissolution of the House of the people by the President. Moving on to the third article that would have to be amended, it's Article 172, which talks about the duration of state legislatures. The fourth article that needs to be amended is 174, and this is about the dissolution of state legislatures. The fifth article that needs to be amended, if at all one nation, one poll has to be implemented, is Article 356, which talks about the imposition of President's rule in states. There's also 2 sections of the Representation of People Act, 14 and 15, that also needs to be amended apart from these constitutional amendments. Let's now, in fact, go ahead and discuss the possible scenario of what we could see if the government indeed has any plans for one nation, one poll. Now, if the government would like to avoid all these legal hurdles, what can it possibly do to perhaps not just implement one nation, one election in a large part, but also put pressure on opposition parties? And this is what top sources are telling us. If the government wants, it can actually implement this possibility of elections in 11 states and 1 union territory in December, along with a Lok Sabha poll. We explain how. And this is the scenario that we're talking about. This is the fact that in 2023 December, that is this year's December, polling is anyway scheduled in 5 states. These are Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Mizoram and Rajasthan. This is scheduled for the end of the year in any case. In April 24, co-terminus with the Lok Sabha are 4 assemblies, 3 of which are in friendly states to the NDA. These are Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and Sikkim, which in fact the ruling party there is a member of the NDA itself. And also in April 2024, we have one BJP ruled state going to the polls, that is Arunachal Pradesh. The Next graphic will show you states where we can see early polls, probably Maharashtra and Haryana, both ruled by the BJP, both where elections are scheduled for end of 2024. And just today, the government has assured the Supreme Court that it's ready for polls in Jammu and Kashmir, and it's up to the Election Commission to decide when. So this is a very, very significant set of numbers, because if there is in fact all of these elections that are held at the same time and a possibility of a midterm poll, which is one of the possibilities that we've spoken about many a time in context of what happens to governments that may fall before completing 5 years, then that pressure could be put by the government on opposition parties to be part of this entire process, saying that they have curtailed the tenure of some of their assemblies as well. But let's take a look at what happens or what could possibly happen. The second scenario we're talking about, that instead of December, simultaneous elections take place in April 2024 along with Lok Sabha polls as per the schedule. Let's take a look at the states and union territories that have completed more than half their term. They may have to go to polls in April 2024 as well. And these are Maharashtra, Haryana, Jharkhand, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, West Bengal, Kerala, Assam, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, Bihar and Delhi. These are states that will have to go to the polls in April 2024 as per this particular scenario, because they would have completed over half their term. Let's also tell you about the 5 states which are going to polls in December. Can one-time extension be made for these states to coincide with 2024? These are the states that we're talking about. There is, of course, Telangana that we told you about earlier. There is also the state of Chhattisgarh. Included in this also is the other state of Madhya Pradesh. There is also, of course, the state that is headed to the polls, that's Mizoram. And apart from Mizoram, the last state is, of course, Rajasthan, that is headed to the polls at the end of the year. Could this happen as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned as well, given the assurance of the centre to the Supreme Court today? That's one likely possibility as well, as far as a one-time extension is concerned. What happens to states that haven't completed their half term? There are 11 such states, and they may have to go to polls in a separate phase. These are the states we're talking about in this particular phase. This is Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Tripura, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Punjab, Goa, Manipur, Gujarat and Karnataka. So a separate mid-term phase that could possibly be made in terms of a provision for these particular states as well is the scenario that we're talking about. Let's now take this across to our guests and in fact debate the various possibilities. What really can we expect from this special session? And if this one nation, one poll, two scenarios that we've put out, will various political parties be actually amenable to it? That's what we're going to be debating today.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Joining us for more, we have with us Shazia LB, national spokesperson of the BJP. Subrashta, author and founder of The Churn, is with us. We have Pugar Gandhi, who is spokesperson of the DMK. Lokesh Jindal is leader of the Congress Party. Vivek Silas is national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. Vivek Srivastava is a political analyst joining us on the broadcast as well. Let me start with the DMK spokesperson, Mr. Pugar Gandhi. Mr. Pugar Gandhi, we've put out 2 scenarios. Are either of these 2 scenarios, in your view, would be things that the opposition would be in a position to accept? Because we know what the Law Commission has said in the past, that it would improve administrative efficiency, that would ensure that, you know, this continuous cycle of elections that we are involved in, with at least 4 or 5 elections in assemblies taking place every year, we can break away from that, and that would be something in national interest. Your view, Mr. Gandhi?
See, right now it is too much of speculation as to whether this is one nation, one election or UCC. And this speculation is actually required for the BJP to divert the attention from the Adani scam which surfaced today, and also from the India alliance which is happening today. See, the problem is one nation, one election. This is totally a bizarre idea, as it is constitutionally an untenable scheme, and moreover, it is also practically not possible to implement the same. Constitutionally, the governance structure is divided between the states and the center, where the union is empowered to legislate or frame policies on the subjects mentioned in the union list, like defense, external affairs, railways, etc. And states are empowered to legislate and frame policies on subjects mentioned in the state list, like law and order and health. Therefore, when a citizen votes, his preference of voting or the judgment to vote will be different vis-a-vis voting for parliament and the state legislature is concerned. Now, by saying that it will be one election, simultaneous election for the center and state, we are actually diluting the judgmental capacity, which is against the basic principles of electoral democracy.
No,
This is one aspect.
no, Mr. Gandhi, we've had, see, there are states that are coterminous. Let's put the facts straight. There have been results. One second, please allow me to just correct one point that you made. Whatever, you have your right to your own opinion, but there have been elections which have been held along with the Lok Sabha, and the election and the result in the state was completely different from what people voted in the Lok Sabha and that state assembly. So why are we confusing the issue here? Why are we conflating the issues?
That is different. That is with respect to some 4 or 5 states going in election, going for election, and their tenure will be coterminous with the parliament. That is a different scenario altogether. But when you bring the same across the country, that will be different completely. That is not a favorable situation. And
Why?
secondly,
Why?
let me complete this point also. Secondly, it is also practically not possible to implement such a scheme, because the whole notion, it goes with the wrong notion that a single party will rule the country and there is no scope for coalition politics. Let me give 3 scenarios. What if scenario number 1? What if there is a coalition government in the center and it fails? Will we dissolve all the assembly along with the parliament and go for election? That is scenario number 1.
Not at all. Have you read the Law Commission report? They actually say that there is a possibility that that we can have midterm elections, that there's a possibility, and this is of course up to debate, and this is where political parties like yours need to come in, that if there is a political vacuum, that for a certain amount of time there could be either president's rule or some other option that could have been taken, and then after the period of 2.5 years, like US for instance has midterm polls for this very reason. Wherever there are vacancies, polls can happen, by-elections can happen.
That is what I'm coming to. If you are going with that particular formula, that is not one nation, one election. One nation, one election means there should be simultaneous polls across the country. That is, state legislatures has to be coterminous with the union parliament's tenure. Here the problem is, in such a scenario, you will have multiple scenarios. Suppose, for example, in scenario number...
So exactly to address the point that you made, and let me bring in some others. Let me bring in some others also, because there are many people on the panel. Shazia LB, is there, in theory, when you look at what the Law Commission has said in terms of the possible scenarios and the possible solutions for one nation, one election, here you have the DMK spokesperson on the one hand saying, that's not pure one nation, one election. What if, one assembly falls, does the entire government fall at the center as well? Because the solution given was the possibility of a midterm poll for those states that do not complete the tenure, for instance.
So let's discuss the merits and demerits of this concept, one nation, one election, without having, giving credence to the speculation that this would be the main agenda of the special session that has been called out. Because I neither confirm nor deny. This has come from sources, as you know. Now let's look at this. 1952, first ever elections in India after India was made a republic. 1957, 1962, 1967. So the first 4 general elections of India took place with the same concept simultaneously. It is only much later, that is 20 years later, that because of defections, different governments falling out or crumbling, and of course all the interference that took place, that there were midterm elections and no confidence motion, which will lead to the legislature being dissolved, the assembly being dissolved. Now coming to this, ever since the Prime Minister has spoken about this, and he has spoken of it many, many times, before he spoke about it, there was talk about all the money being wasted, the cost of elections versus the cost of democracy. And, in the last election, close to 4,000 crores was spent by, in a country to have the elections. Now the idea is that a confident party or confident, coalition would be happy to have this thing, because they were the first ones to say that the Prime Minister is spending too much time campaigning for his party, going from here to there, and what is happening to the work of development and the mandate of every party and every member of parliament and that of MLA, because they are taken away from that and they are deployed in campaigning.
Let me bring in Vivek Srivastava on that point. Vivek Srivastava, the point is that on the one hand, the BJP spokesperson says you criticize the Prime Minister for spending too much time.
Need to get so bent out of shape.
One second, please. One second, please. Let's not talk over each other. One second. Shazia, you made a point. Let me get a quick response from Vivek on this. Vivek, the point is simple. that if your party is committed to this idea,
Yeah, see.
would you be willing to either curtail or extend your tenure? As we've put out, there are various scenarios. Or even if the government decides unilaterally to put all its states to vote, whichever can or whichever have elections nearby over the next 1 year or so, and that would ensure that 12 state elections along with the centre takes place. Would that be something that your party would be willing to comply with and ensure that opposition parties all have their, or other political parties, whichever are left in states, have their elections after 2.5 years? Is that not a feasible idea?
Yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. See, Madhav, the first thing is that, Shazia Elmi should answer this question, that why is the special session being called in the first place and without an agenda? The government doesn't know an agenda and it is calling a special session. It basically shows that they do not want a healthy discussion with the opposition even in these 5 days. They have been bulldozing bills after bills. Farmers bill was passed, later on the Prime Minister apologized, took it back. 370 was removed without passing it through the assembly. This government is trying to bulldoze bills without discussion, without public opinion, without talking to the media, without talking to the experts. Number one.
And you when you are taking,
when you are taking such a big decision, you need to talk to all the players. That includes the media people like Madhav, the people who are conducting the polls. And they have some ground report which is much more than what the Law Commission is saying. You are not doing it. Number two, very rightly the DMK spokesperson said that in case of a coalition government which keeps on falling time and again and keeps on, Shazia, we had this system earlier after 1952 because at that time the Congress was in one brute majority and it was going systematically. Later on coalition politics came into picture. Even at Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time there was a coalition government.
Yeah.
It fell once and then
it was Article 350 in fact that necessitated it. It was Article 356 that necessitated it. Yeah.
This is basic stuff.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. Shazia, let me rephrase the question. Shazia, 2 points, Shazia, that are being made by opposition, and answer both these questions. Shazia, 1 second, listen to the question, please. The question is this. The question that I'm asking you is very simple. Please listen in. The question is very simple, that A, the question that the DMK spokesperson posed is that you're trying to divert from the Adani issue, and B, at the same time, how can you have a special session without an agenda? Make it public.
Are we going to have a tea party in the parliament?
So tell me something, if we are trying to distract from either the I.N.D.I.A alliance or the Adani issue, you need not do it. Why are you falling in the trap? Why are you getting bent out of shape? Why are you giving one, statement after the other as to how this is derailing, your party and the other parties in the alliance and the activities? It's up to you. The very fact that you're so bent out of shape means that you fear something. Two, this has been an old idea of the Prime Minister, something he spoke about in 2015 and has been talking about it since then. It has been discussed many times over. There have been discussions on the subject, and I'm sure there will be more. So why are you jumping the gun? So mere speculation, right?
Okay, gentlemen. Let me come in here, gentlemen. Please, 1 second. Let me just come in here. The other spokespersons who have not yet spoken. Please allow me to conduct the debate, please. I don't want to bring in Vivek Sailas. Vivek Sailas, simple question to you, sir. We've seen what the Samajwadi Party actually said before the Law Commission. The Samajwadi Party is one of the few opposition parties that actually favors simultaneous elections. So will you be in favor of this particular proposal if the government does bring this in either through legal amendments or through the non-legal route, which is by dissolving assemblies and setting the example? Vivek Sailas.
Yes, good evening. I very precisely remember that Mr. Akhilesh Yadav, our national president, said in October 2018 that we don't mind it at all. But I agree with Mr. Vivek Srivastava that at least Ms. Shazia Elmi should tell as to what the agenda is for the special parliament session, or the government has to tell why they are calling the special parliament session. What is the need? I think the Bharatiya Janata Party and the NDA, they look pretty confused, they look scared, they look unclear, they look disordered, demented, whatever you may call it. They don't know what they are doing actually. A party for the last 4 sessions, if you see Madhav, who are unable to run the parliament successfully.
Let's not resort to insults. I mean, it'll just lead to an unnecessary acrimonious debate. Let's keep our debate civil, please. With Mr. Sailas.
He said demented.
Yeah, no. I've already addressed that, Shazia. Let's all be a little above this, please. Yes, Mr. Salas.
Yes. If you see from the last 4 sessions, the Bharatiya Janata Party or the NDA is unable to run the parliament very successfully, because it is the duty of the ruling party to conduct the parliament, the proceeding of the parliament. And the party that shies away from issues like inflation and unemployment, there are serious border issues. We need to discuss that as well. I don't know when the Bharatiya Janata Party will discuss on that. We are having a riots on in Haryana. Manipur is still not quiet. We need that.
The CAG report
The problem is the lies of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Shazia ji. Problem is the lies of the Bharatiya Janata Party and Honorable Prime Minister. That is the problem that the country is facing as of now.
Agreed to having simultaneous polls.
The problem with the Bharatiya Janata Party is their lies. The lies of the Prime Minister. That is being spoken since 2014.
On one nation, one election.
That is the problem.
Why are you running away from it?
Okay. Let me bring in other panelists as well now. Okay, Mr. Salas. Mr. Salas, you made your point.
Agenda, Chacha ji?
You made your point.
You yourself don't know it.
No, but you know what is your agenda?
What is the agenda of the new parliament session?
Okay.
You have called the parliament session. You should be knowing.
Let's. I'm going to now lower our faders. I'm going to have to lower faders, Mr. Salas. Let me quickly go across to other panelists. Subrashta is with us on the broadcast. Subrashta, what is a more likely scenario in your view? 5 constitutional amendments, 2 amendments to the RP Act, or do this without any legal hurdles? Is the government actually thinking about these movements? Is this just speculation?
First of all, I think that these are speculations. They may be rife speculations, but till the time the government has an official communique, I think the whole conversation would be a little too effete. You know, Shazia ji mentioned how 4,000 crore was spent in the last elections. I think she needs to be corrected. It was, if one were to actually estimate the cost of election, it would be somewhere to the tune of 55,000 crores. And this is what I've been doing till my, till my fellow panelists were speaking. I was trying to look up and see who has this prerogative to call the special session of the parliament. If at all one nation, one election becomes a reality, are we really going to save up on resources, or is it just, is it just speculation and conversation? I think it would do a huge service to our nation, and especially a nation as young as India, which is slowly and which is actually rapidly going to go on the other side of the demographic dividend. It's important for us to understand that our resources are scarce and we really need to deploy them at the right time. Now, if I were to make this debate political, Madhav, I have certain political questions to ask of the opposition. Now, the opposition keeps on saying that the Modi government hates conversations. They hate dialogue. Then here is another special session for you to go out and have a conversation with the government and among yourselves on different issues legitimately on the floor of the House. Last session also, we saw some really important MPs leave the floor of the House while important bills were under discussion. And this has been in the case in the past as well.
Okay.
The other point is, if the opposition, sir, please, I did not interrupt anyone.
Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Srivastav, let her make a point. She has just started speaking. Mr. Jindal is yet to speak. Please, can we have a civilized debate? Please, my request to all of you.
I did not speak a word while you were speaking.
Subrashta, continue.
You know, I don't know who in the panel used, okay, I don't want to go down that route of, how they used the word dementia in a certain way. But the point is, please hear me out. Has the opposition, forget about the government may have a lot of follies and the opposition may be, more moral than thou in any circumstance that they would want to believe. Have they conducted a survey to actually find out how many youngsters in this country would advocate for one nation, one election? There are so many conversations these guys do on ground. There was a Bharat Jodo Yatra and whatnot. You have somebody from the Congress party in the panel, please ask. If the youth of the country is not
Subrashta's question to you,
Lokesh Jindal.
Subrashta's question to you, if you wanted to discuss Manipur, the entire monsoon session was literally washed out due to the protests. And clearly, if you went to Manipur, you could have used the parliament and used that forum and used the floor of the House to express what you saw and tell the nation what you saw. Instead of a discussion, we just saw a complete washout. Why not use this special session?
Well, the washout was because rather than answering the questions, there was political campaigning in the parliament. That's why there was a walkout. And secondly, when Subhrashtra ji was telling us about the merits of one nation, one election, let me tell you, madam, 4 times we had simultaneous elections, and we are a polity where there is a parliamentary system, where we have an executive responsible to the legislature, we have multi-party system, federalism, and in this form of a polity, it is next to impossible to have simultaneous elections, because even if it is done, if it is experimented, it is bound to fail, it is bound to be reformed. And secondly, when you're talking about the government suddenly coming up with a special session without even telling the objective for what it is conducting it, I mean, it is something which is absolutely
Lokesh Jindal, may I ask you a
unethical, I would
question,
say.
sir? May I just ask you a simple
Yes.
question? Do you believe UK has a functioning parliamentary democracy? Do you believe Sweden has a
UK has a
functioning
unitary
parliament?
form of parliament,
Yes.
sir.
Do you think
UK
Sweden has a
unitary
functioning
form of
one second,
parliament.
just
We are a federal
one
polity.
second. Listen to my question. I've not even completed my question. Does UK have a functioning form of parliamentary democracy? Is Sweden, according to you, a functioning parliamentary democracy? And is South Africa one or not? Yes or no?
Sir, they are functioning parliamentary democracy, but UK is a unitary parliamentary democracy.
Yes,
India
but
is a
you know what is
federal
common
structure.
about
India
these
has a
3
federal
countries?
structure.
Do you know what is common about
Sorry?
these 3 countries?
So
They
have a
all have
simultaneous election, as you
simultaneous
will say.
polls. They all have simultaneous polls.
Agreed. But sir,
Yes.
India's constitution, you cannot compare to that of UK. In India, we have a
One
separate
second,
union
one
list,
second.
state list.
Sir, our
We
entire
have
system is
public-
built on the Westminster model. What are you talking
No,
about?
no, absolutely
Our
not.
entire
State
parliamentary and
India's
constitutional system
federalism is
and our
modeled-
entire
India's
structure is
federalism
based on the
is not
Westminster
modeled
model.
on UK.
We have borrowed
No, sir,
concepts
you're
from other
mistaken.
constitutions and countries,
No,
but it's based on the
absolutely not.
Westminster model.
India's federalism is Canadian in character.
It's Canadian.
India's federalism is Canadian in character.
We have a
It is
Canadian
not
constitution,
something
according
that
to
is-
you.
Sir, the constitution was a patchwork. We borrowed a lot of features from other countries. and
Yes,
the federalism
very,
that we
very,
have
very true.
is-
But the
was
basis,
inspired
the
from the
basis is the
Canadian model.
Westminster
May I
system.
respond?
So when I'm talking about Westminster, I agree, Government of India Act
Westminster is
1935, it was heavily influenced by the Westminster model.
So why
and
can't-
the entire Constitution of India has 75% of Government of India Act 1935.
Okay.
But other aspects such as
can I come
emergency,
in, please?
concurrent
I
provisions,
just want to
federal
come in,
provisions,
please.
Okay.
they are all
I,
borrowed
two,
from
three
other
things I want
Okay,
to
okay,
say.
one second.
For example,
Shazia, just a
the
second. I want to get Subhrashtra to reply because she's come in very late in the debate. Yes,
Yes,
Subhrashtra.
I want to make a small point.
I'm coming to
Very
Shazia.
brief
Just a
point.
minute.
No,
I'm
no,
just
let me
coming to you.
make
Let
a brief
Subhrashtra
point,
come in
you know.
now. Yeah.
So firstly, Madhav, when I talked about 4,000 crores,
Shazia-
it was the money
there's a-
spent by
this
the
is a huge
election
point.
Yeah,
commission.
Shazia, one
of
second. We can't have 2 people talking at the same time, please. I request you, Shazia, just 1 second. Let Subhrashtra respond to him and then I come to you. Yeah.
I will wait, but I will want time later on.
When
Yes.
Lokesh Jindal says that almost 75% of our constitution is based on 1935 Act, in fact, I would like to take this cue and request the government to amend our constitution by constitutional methods. It's actually true, and 1935 India was not independent. 1935 Act by no means favored the Indians more than the
I think you
British.
don't even
I
know
think
that
it's
the
time that we
labor
do
law-
away with the
Madam, what are you
coloniality and
talking?
have a constitution.
Ma'am, do you even know the provisions of 1935?
I'm talking
One second,
about
one second, one second,
constitutional
one second.
amendment, sir.
Okay,
I'm
many
talking
hands going
about
up.
going back
Ma'am, we have had
to our roots.
Okay, one second, gentlemen. Just 1 second. You can respond. You can respond to Subhrashtra. You can respond to Subhrashtra one by one. One by one. Subhrashtra, 1 second. You seem to have evoked a lot of reactions. I want to go across to Mr. Gandhi first and foremost, and then I'm coming to Mr. Srivastav. Please, 1 second. Let's have this debate in an orderly way. Mr. Gandhi, your objection to what Subhrashtra just said.
See, first of all, Madhav, let me clarify one thing. India is a federal structure. It is not like Britain, which is a unitary structure. Westminster model is different. It is with respect to bicameral proceedings. That is different entirely. And as far as 1935 Act is concerned, that particular 1935 Act does not have any relevance today. And I don't know what that spokesperson, the founder, the Churn, is speaking about amending the Constitution. Which provision of the Constitution has to be amended? That needs to be clear. Without that, and secondly,
I just read it out, sir. There are 5 constitutional amendments. If you want, I can read out the particular articles.
No.
that need
I'm not
amendment.
talking about
But
that.
the
And second, last one, my last point. If there is a provision
1 second, let him
for,
complete. Let him complete. Yeah.
if there is a provision for
There is a
bypolls
fact check
in this
required.
particular concept,
Madhav,
then
there's
what is
another
it?
correction
How is
I
it
want to
different
make.
from the usual poll?
Okay. How is it different from a usual poll? Shazia Elmi, respond to that.
No, you're
Shazia
wrong
Elmi.
about that.
Required,
No, Yes, so first of all, I need to, a lot of things have been said. I know my constitution very well and its constitutional history. So our constitution is unitary and
one
federal
second, Subhrashta, please.
It
Let
has a
Shazia
strong
come in now.
unitary component, and it is, so it's very often it's called quasi-federalism. Unitary and federal both. It takes largely from the Westminster model, but it also takes from the French and the American constitutions. It is the lengthiest constitution in the world. So please be corrected. It is not just a federal
Mr.
constitution.
Jindal, nobody interrupted you, sir. Why are you doing this?
Union, state and concurrent. If it was a federal constitution all alone. So please correct yourself and do not all become authorities because, precious little. So mostly, and secondly, ECI, which is Election Commission of India, spent 4,000 crores. The overall cost of elections is huge. So I think there is merit in the point that polls are done simultaneously for Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha. It might not seem tenable and possible, but it makes sense for us as a country, for better governance, for it to be more effective, and for better delivery in terms of development goals. So I think we need to work towards that.
Yeah,
and
Vivek Srivastava. I want Vivek to quickly come in. Vivek wanted to make some points. Yes, Vivek, quick response.
Discuss the idea.
Vivek, quick response.
Why are you in such a? Why do you feel like you're going to?
Okay, Shazia, you made your point. Now let Vivek come in. Yes, Vivek Srivastava.
Shazia, you are very correct when you say.
Discussing
it. Shazia, just listen to me. You are very correct when you say 4,000 crores is what the election commission spends, and that is what is the burden on the government. Why are you counting the expenditure of the candidate? And 4,000 crores is not a very big amount. जितना आप capitalist businessmen के loans माफ करते हैं, if you see the NPS that you are doing, I mean, you start crying when it comes to welfare schemes for the poor and for this kind of spending. That should not be done. This is a valid expenditure. It should be done. Secondly, elections are of a very different nature. For example, in Kerala and Delhi, if you compare the Lok Sabha seats, all 7 Lok Sabha seats have gone to the BJP, but the Vidhan Sabha is being controlled by Aam Aadmi Party with 90% of the seats. You go to Kerala, the Lok Sabha seats, majority has gone to the Congress. But the state government is that of the left parties. So there's a very different.
I'm very glad you said that because that just counters what Mr. Gandhi said a short while ago. But let me ask you a question. And there's a genuine concern over here. Shazia, help me 1 second. Shazia, there's a genuine concern over here.
Yeah.
And the questions that are coming up from the opposition are leading me to ask this. Because, the questions will be this. That yes, the Prime Minister has addressed this issue very often. But where has there been an all-party meeting, a consultative process to try and evolve views and try and build consensus on this issue on part of the government?
So let me tell you, let me apprise all of you that there have been discussions. This is not the first time Prime Minister has discussed it. And all parties have given their statements on it. And there would be more. There should be and there will be a wider consultative process. But the fact is to jump the gun and to live in such fear, morbid fear of losing election after election, that you just want to stump and slam every idea that is good for the country, even for you. You'll be surprised. And because Vivek just made the point for me, because people know who they're voting for. People know when they're voting for Lok Sabha. People know when they're voting for Vidhan Sabha. So they know who they want as a chief minister. They also know who they want for the prime minister.
But Vivek Salas's party was part of one such consultation. Vivek Salas, the Law Commission did consult your party. You did agree. We mentioned that earlier. Are you asking for the government to bring more such coordination? Because end of the day, let's remember that such special sessions have been called before. Of course, we have seen it very often, whether it's post-62 war, the 1997 50th anniversary of India's independence, or even recently in June 2017 to discuss GST. So the question will be that you can demand, of course, further consultation, but the very idea of opposing a special session is, of course, questionable, given the track record of Parliament.
I think the NITI Aayog has also said about this and commented about this also, where Honorable Prime Minister is the head, and they said that this can be discussed in 2029, not before that. But I am very, I go with Mr. Vivek Srivastava that 4,000 crores is not a big amount. And Shazia ji said 4,000 crores and, Subhrashta ji said 55,000 crores. They should be clear whether it's 4,000 crores or it's 55,000 crores. I can tell you one thing, the Bharatiya Janata Party spends more than 4,000 crores to dismantle the government. They spend more than 4,000 crores. 50 khokha sab okay. 50 khoke sab okay. You spend more than that of your black money.
Okay.
So don't
okay.
tell me that it's a burden on the
Let's be reasonable. Let's be reasonable. Mr. Salas, let's not make unsubstantiated charges here. That's, I mean, it might sound great as a poll slogan. Let's be slightly, factual in what our arguments are. Back them up in facts. Subrashta wants to respond to you. Very quickly, Subrashta.
Yes, I mean, I think Shazia ji made it amply clear, and it was, the data is not contested, sir. It's you, the opposition, which cries foul on the fact that a lot of money is being spent in elections unnecessarily. So, by all means, support one nation, one election and get done away with it. I mean, Shazia ji made it very clear that 4,000 crores was spent by the Election Commission of India. But did Rahul Gandhi or did Narendra Modi or did Amit Shah ji or Mallikarjun Kharge spend just 4,000 crores, and did it include all the party expenditure? Please have some basic sense of data when you try to contest.
Okay, you're talking about the expenditure of all the candidates put together. Okay.
You're triggered because Shazia ji and I both called you out on that.
Okay. Quick response. Lokesh Jindal, quick response. We've seen in 62 a special session called. We've seen in 97 a special session called. Why are you opposed to the special session per se?
Madhav, there are certain arguments. One nation, one election is a utopian concept. Any experienced politician or a person working on the ground, he understands how complex it is going to be to put it in action. There are lots of constitutional hurdles, political complications, social aspects associated with this exercise.
Absolutely,
so I would
no doubt there are legal hurdles as well. But the point is that whether all will have the intent to actually implement this, Lokesh Jindal. Completely out of time on this debate. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us on the first discussion. I'd like to thank Subrashta, Mr. Pugar Gandhi, Lokesh Jindal, Vivek Silas for joining us. Vivek Srivastava and Shazia Almi stay with us for debate number 2.